Hello. Okay, I'm just recording this quick little clip to let you know. This video is a bit different. What you're about to see is 10 minutes of me talking about what I've been doing a month and a half ago. So it's a bit out of sync. I'm editing the video about my week-long experiment about renting washing machines. There's a lot of footage and it's not completely wrapped. The 5 days has turned into 10. So I'm still working on it, but it's coming out next week. So in the meantime, enjoy me talking about my debt industry research. And if this is not interesting, just leave and I'll see you next week. Okay, I want to tell you about this thing that I've been doing for the past month and a half. I was on a website called IdeaBrowser, which is like a database of business ideas, and they were talking about this cemetery management softwares. And so I'm starting to do research on cemeteries because I was curious. I didn't really know much about it. And then I end up on this website called Find a Grave. I don't know what Find a Grave is. I have done some genealogy when I was like a teenager, and kind of did my family tree. And then I found this website and I was like, okay, cool. This is interesting. You can go see people's cemeteries. So I Googled my grandma's plot and it wasn't there because I went to a cemetery to see her and I spent like 30 minutes walking around trying to find where her headstone was. And so I went on here, couldn't find it. But then I realized if you go here and you can see a bunch of cemeteries, right? We have a lot of cemeteries that are significant in Montreal. So if you go on a website and you look for a cemetery, there's this thing here that caught my attention. 200 photo requests. And I was like, photos for headstones. So when you click on here, it brings you to the list of photo requests that people have submitted. And then you could click on some profiles. And if you look like this woman here, she's had 16,000 memorials. Like a memorial is like a photo of a headstone or like a documentation of a profile. So like if I go here and I'm like, hey, this person, this is a memorial, right? So there's a person, some dates. They're not all that complete. Okay. This woman added 16,000 of them. She's requested 300 plus photos. She has added 13,000 photos and she's been creating 21 memorials per week for years, right? She's been on this platform for 14 years. That's insane. This is a hobby. And I was like, the scope at which people do this is like crazy. So I kept thinking about those photos. And I was like, why do these people need the photos? What are they doing with it? How do you end up with 16,000 memorials? Like that can't be your family. Like there's no way that's scale and magnitude. So I started messaging some of these people. I created an account. I started messaging people and I was like, hey, can we talk? And a lot of them are down. I've had a lot of conversations with some people who straight up just messaged me their phone numbers. And they were like, yeah, I'll talk to you. And I started asking them a bunch of questions. I was like, why do you do this? What's the scope at which you're doing it? How is this, and I've talked to a woman who's like, well, this is a hobby. I'm retired. I'm doing this 4 to 5 hours every day. And I've been doing so for over 10 years. And I'm just like, genealogy is apparently the second biggest hobby as far as like market shares in the US. First one being gardening. I had no clue it was a $6 billion industry. It makes a lot of sense when you realize how obsessive a lot of these people are. Not a lot, some of these people are. And I was trying to understand this because there's like multiple platforms where you can put photos. Find a Grave seems to be, by all accounts, the biggest one. It is now owned by Ancestry. It was started as a website from a guy who enjoyed visiting headstones or like memorials of famous people. And it grew to an unprecedented size. But the percentage of the amount of the documentation that's available, photos, is very, very low. And a lot of the cemeteries are not digitized, are still running on paper. I've talked to a lot of people who were telling me that when they have information or questions, they would contact cemeteries, but have given up doing so because they're not really good at answering, or sometimes it take a long time. And some cemeteries are managed by churches who don't have a lot of resources, or are sometimes just even abandoned. And there's a significant amount of people who are doing this every day and request these photos for one memories, because we don't have an ability to travel to someone to go see the cemetery, or we want to confirm some information. That's a big one. And there is no one who makes money in this whole thing. This website, Find a Grave, is entirely free. People do this out of the kindness of their heart. They go out to cemeteries and take photos with their cell phone for other people. There are plenty of databases, and they all rely on volunteers. Find a Grave has been entirely community powered for multiple decades at this point. And I wanted to understand what the appeal or the need for those photos was, and the scale, because some people have multiple hundreds of requests for photos at any given point. And I talked to some people and I was like, well, is this like a nice to have? Would you pay? I talked to a woman who takes photos, and I was asking her, and she says, no one has ever offered me money. So it's really interesting because there seems to be a gap where the information is not available. It's obviously not sustainable at scale to say we're going to take photos of all of them, because there's new one all the time and you can't really know unless you're talking to the cemetery. But I just thought that was I don't know, when I saw the photo request thing on the website, that really kind of lit something in me where I was like, well, there's people who have a need, and this need is sometimes not addressed. I mean, there's obviously weather that makes it difficult. Like a lot of the times you can't take photos when it's winter because you can't really navigate the cemeteries. Cemetery navigation itself is very complicated. Some bigger cemeteries will have maps on their website. Most don't. And most cemeteries are run by a nonprofit or sometimes by the church. And in some cases, municipalities end up taking them over. I spoke to a woman actually this morning from this small town in middle nowhere, Ontario, who is telling me that there's 6 or 7 cemeteries on their territory. They run one of them. But in cases where the cemetery becomes abandoned, they basically take them over and maintain it, but they don't have any documentation. So they've had to pay to get the cemetery scanned so they would know where people were and if there is someone buried there or not, and kind of match that with the actual information. And they have some softwares to document like plots, but all of the information of where people are and the dates and whatnot and who owns the plot is in Word documents. And this is a municipality who has like resources. We're not talking about like a church or a non-profit, right? So it's still really interesting to see how little some of those places are documented or how ill documented they are. It seems to be a thing that like people who do genealogy as a hobby seem to enjoy the challenge. Like most of the people I talked to said this is a puzzle I'm trying to solve, and it's part of the game for them. But they also have all of them. Every single person I talked to has multiple subscriptions to multiple services, Ancestry usually being one of them. But there's a significant amount of resources and databases out there you can pay, like newspapers, to have access to archives to try and trace people. So there's definitely some need and some demand, and there's a significant amount of money being spent. I just don't really know about the execution part of it at scale, and how to build something that would have enough value that people would be willing to pay and not feel like they are taking advantage of, because that seems to be a thing. I read about that on Reddit a lot, where some people kind of argue that Ancestry is such a big company in this space that they are trying to go out of their way to not give them more money, or make sure that if you take some photos and put them on Find a Grave, which belongs to Ancestry, also put them somewhere else so they don't all become the property. Anyway, yeah, this is like a month's worth of research in, 9 minutes, but um, it's something I'm really curious to kind of keep digging into. I'm going to try and talk to more cemeteries and more municipalities. I've sent a lot of emails, but the response rates are all over the place. So I'm hoping that I can have a couple more conversations. Like, I've definitely learned a lot of interesting things. I just don't know that I have anything solid enough that it's worth starting to build something just yet. And I wouldn't really know about anybody's ability to. I mean, I think the ability to pay is there. I don't know about the willingness to pay. So I'm not sure that this is something that it would pursue in its current form. But I think there might be something as far as like cemetery documentation or um, like a world where it's not something where you ask for cemeteries who already don't have money to pay up front, but more like you provide value and there's a kind of profit sharing or I mean, I don't know how that would work. There's also like a lot less people are getting buried every year, so it might just be like a dying thing. And anyway, not sure yet. Stay tuned.